never thought grief could feel so lonely in a room full of people. The funeral parlor smelled like lilies and old wood, the kind of scent that clings to your clothes long after you leave. I sat in the back row, my daughter Maya asleep against my shoulder, her tiny fingers curled around the fabric of my black dress. She was 3, too young to understand that her grandmother, my mother, was never coming home. Around us, distant relatives whispered and dabbed at their eyes with crumpled tissues. People I hadn't seen in years, people who'd never called when Mom got sick, never offered to help when I was working double shifts at the diner while trying to keep her comfortable in her final months. I'd done it alone, just like I'd done everything else since Maya's father walked out before she was born. The service droned on. I stopped listening. My mind wandered to the stack of medical bills waiting on my kitchen counter, to the landlord's warning about late rent, to the empty refrigerator I'd have to figure out how to fill tomorrow. Mom's death had left a hole in my heart, but it had also left me drowning in debt I'd never be able to climb out of. "Let us bow our heads," the minister said. I closed my eyes, but I wasn't praying. I was calculating, adding, subtracting, trying to find an equation that didn't end with me and Maya on the street. That's when I felt it, the weight of someone's gaze, heavy and deliberate, like a hand pressed against the back of my neck. I lifted my head slowly, scanning the rows of mourners. Most had their eyes closed, faces tilted downward in false reverence. But near the entrance, partially hidden by a marble column, stood a man I'd never seen before. He wore a black suit that looked like it cost more than my car. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes God. His eyes so dark they looked almost black, fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. He wasn't supposed to be here. I knew everyone who'd known my mother, and this man was a stranger, a dangerous stranger. Something in my gut whispered. He didn't look away when I met his stare. Didn't pretend he'd been looking at something else. He just watched me with the kind of focus that made my skin prickle with awareness, like he was memorizing every detail of my face. I broke eye contact first, heart hammering against my ribs. Maya stirred against my shoulder, and I smoothed her dark curls, using her as an anchor to reality. This was my mother's funeral. I was exhausted and grieving and probably imagining things. There was no reason for a man like that to be looking at a woman like me. The service ended. People began to file toward the exit, murmuring condolences I barely heard. I stood, adjusting Maya in my arms, and joined the slow procession toward the door. The stranger was gone. I told myself I was relieved. Outside, the November air bit through my thin coat. I'd parked 3 blocks away because I couldn't afford the funeral home's lot fee. Maya was getting heavy, and my heels clicked unevenly on the cracked sidewalk as I walked. The sun was setting, casting long shadows between the buildings of this old neighborhood, where Mom had spent her entire life. I was half a block from my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Steady, deliberate, getting closer. My pulse spiked. I shifted Maya higher on my hip and walked faster, fumbling in my purse for my keys. The street was emptying as evening fell, most people already heading home to warm houses and full refrigerators. "Excuse me." The voice was low and smooth, with an edge of command that made me freeze mid-step. It didn't sound like a question. It sounded like an order. I turned slowly, heart in my throat. It was him, the stranger from the funeral. Up close, he was even more imposing, at least 6'3", with shoulders that filled out his expensive suit in a way that spoke of power, not just money. His face was all hard angles and shadows, but his eyes held something I couldn't quite name, something that made me think of midnight and secrets and things too dangerous to touch. "Yes?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. He stepped closer, and I instinctively stepped back, clutching Maya tighter. He noticed, and something flickered across his face. Not offense, something softer, almost like regret. "I knew your mother," he said quietly. "I wanted to pay my respects." I frowned. "I've never seen you before." "She probably didn't mention me." His gaze dropped to Maya, who was starting to wake up, blinking sleepily against my neck. When he looked back at me, his expression had shifted into something I couldn't read. "She did me a kindness once. A long time ago. I don't forget things like that." There was weight in those words. History. Layers I couldn't begin to unpack. Oh. I didn't know what else to say. Maya whimpered, rubbing her eyes, and I bounced her gently. Well, thank you for coming. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me again. You're alone. It wasn't a question. Somehow, he already knew. I glanced back at him, wary now. I'm fine. No. His jaw tightened. You're not. The certainty in his voice sent a chill down my spine. How could he possibly know that? How could he see through me so easily when everyone else at that funeral had looked right past me? Maya started to fuss, sensing my tension. I jostled her, trying to soothe her, but my hands were shaking. This man, whoever he was, saw too much, knew too much. I have to go, I said, more firmly this time. He took another step forward, and despite every instinct screaming at me to run, I didn't move, couldn't move. He stopped just close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, like cedar and smoke. Let me hold your hand, he said softly. I blinked. What? Your hand. He held out his own, palm up, long fingers, no rings, a faint scar across his knuckles. You're carrying too much. Let me hold something for you. Just for a moment. It was the strangest request I'd ever heard. And yet, looking into his eyes, I felt something crack open inside my chest. Something that had been locked tight since the day I found out I was pregnant and utterly alone. Since the day I watched my mother take her last breath with no one there but me. I should have walked away, should have gotten in my car and never looked back. Instead, slowly I shifted Maya to one arm and placed my free hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and impossibly gentle. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I didn't feel like I was drowning. What's your name? He asked, his thumb brushing across my knuckles in a touch that felt both protective and possessive. Ilara, I whispered. Ilara. He said it like a prayer, like a promise. I'm Dante. And then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and everything about him. Changed in an instant, the warmth vanished, replaced by something cold and lethal. His grip on my hand tightened almost painfully before he released me. I have to go, he said. His voice suddenly clipped. But I'll see you again. It sounded like a threat and a vow all at once. He walked away, disappearing into a black car with tinted windows that I hadn't noticed before. It pulled away from the curb with barely a sound, leaving me standing alone on the darkening street with my daughter in my arms and my hand still tingling where he'd touched me. I didn't know who Dante was, but I knew, with a certainty that terrified me, that my life had just changed forever. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, Dante, his dark gaze burning into mine, the way his hand had swallowed my smaller one, the strange gentleness in his touch that contradicted everything else about him. The way he'd looked at Maya like she mattered, like we both mattered. No one had looked at me like that in years. I told myself it meant nothing. He was just a stranger, paying respects to my mother. I'd never see him again. Life would go back to its exhausting, predictable rhythm of work and bills and trying to keep my daughter fed. But when I finally dragged myself out of bed at 6 a.m., something felt different. Wrong. Or maybe right in a way that scared me. I fed Maya cereal with the last of our milk, got her dressed in clothes that were getting too small, and dropped her at the neighbor's apartment. Mrs. Chen watched her during my morning shift at the diner for $20 a day, money I could barely afford, but had no choice but to spend. You look tired, honey, Mrs. Chen said, her wrinkled hand patting my arm. I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. The diner was the same as always. Cracked vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, and customers who tipped in loose change. I tied on my stained apron and fell into the mechanical routine of taking orders, refilling cups, smiling until my face hurt. But my mind kept drifting back to last night, to the funeral, to him. Let me hold your hand. What kind of man said something like that? What kind of man looked at a struggling single mother and saw something worth noticing? Order up, Ilara. Joe, the cook, barked from the kitchen window. I grabbed the plates and delivered them to table 7, barely registering the customers' faces. My body moved on autopilot while my thoughts spiraled. I had Maya's doctor appointment next week I couldn't afford. The electric company had sent a final notice, and Mom's funeral expenses were going to bury me deeper than I already was. I was so lost in my mental calculations that I almost didn't notice when the diner went quiet. It happened gradually. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks stopped scraping against plates. Even Joe stopped clattering pans in the kitchen. I looked up from wiping down table 3. A man stood in the doorway. Not Dante, someone different, but cut from the same cloth. Expensive suit, cold eyes. The kind of presence that made normal people instinctively step back. He scanned the diner until his gaze landed on me, then walked directly to where I stood, his polished shoes clicking against the grimy linoleum. Alara Hayes? His voice was flat, professional. My throat went dry. Yes? He reached into his jacket. I flinched, stupid images of guns and violence flashing through my mind, but all he pulled out was a manila envelope. Thick, heavy. This is for you. He held it out. From Mr. Moretti. Moretti. Dante's last name, I realized. I hadn't known it until now. I don't understand. My hands stayed at my sides, afraid to touch the envelope like it might burn me. He asked me to deliver it. That's all I know. The man's expression didn't change, but something in his tone suggested he was lying. He knew exactly what was in that envelope. He placed it on the table between us and walked out without another word. The diner stayed silent for another beat, then slowly conversations resumed. But I felt eyes on me, curious, suspicious. In a neighborhood like this, attention was dangerous. My fingers trembled as I picked up the envelope. It was sealed, my name written across the front in bold, decisive handwriting. You taking a break or what? Joe called from the kitchen. Just a minute, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I carried the envelope to the employee bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the closed toilet lid. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. This is crazy. You don't know this man. This could be anything. But I also knew, with a strange certainty, that Dante Moretti wasn't going to hurt me. Whatever was in this envelope, it wasn't a threat. I tore it open. Cash, stacks of it. More money than I'd seen in my entire life, bound with paper bands. I pulled out one stack with shaking hands, all hundreds. I counted quickly, my mind struggling today. Processed the number. $50,000. I stopped breathing. Tucked between the bills was a small card, the same bold handwriting. For your mother's debts. No one should grieve alone while drowning. No phone number. No signature beyond what I already knew. Just those words that cracked something open inside my chest. He'd known. Somehow, Dante had known exactly how desperate I was. How close to breaking. And he'd fixed it. Just like that. With money that probably meant nothing to him but everything to me. I should have felt relieved. Grateful. Instead, I felt terrified. Because this wasn't charity. Men like Dante Moretti didn't give away $50,000 without expecting something in return. I didn't know what his world looked like, but I knew enough to understand that this money came with invisible strings attached. What have you done? A voice whispered in my head. What have you gotten yourself into? I stuffed the cash back in the envelope, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip it. I couldn't keep this. I had to return it. Had to find him, and explain that I couldn't accept it. That I wasn't the kind of woman who took money from dangerous men. But even as I thought it, another part of me, the exhausted, desperate mother part, whispered, why not? This money would pay off everything. The medical bills, the funeral costs, rent for the next 6 months. I could buy Maya new clothes, proper shoes, maybe even afford to take a day off without panic. I could breathe. I left the bathroom and finished my shift in a daze, the envelope burning like a brand inside my purse. Every customer's face blurred together. Every order became background noise. When I finally picked up Maya from Mrs. Chen's, my daughter threw her arms around my neck, and I held her tight, breathing in the baby shampoo scent of her hair. Mama, you're squishing me, she giggled. Sorry, baby. I loosened my grip but didn't let go. As we walked back to our apartment, I noticed the black car parked across the street. Same one from last night. Tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside, watching. I didn't have to see him to know it was Dante. My pulse kicked up. Fear and something else, something dangerous and electric racing through my veins. I kept walking, unlocked our door, and brought Maya inside. But before I closed it, I glanced back. The car was still there. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that Dante Moretti wasn't done with me. He was just getting started. The car followed me for 3 days. Not obviously, not threateningly, but it was always there parked across from the diner during my shift, idling half a block from Mrs. Chen's apartment when I dropped Maya off, waiting in the shadows outside our building at night. I should have called the police, should have been terrified. Instead, I felt something closer to anticipation, like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you shouldn't jump but unable to stop yourself from leaning forward. The money sat in my closet, still in its envelope, untouched. Every time I opened the door and saw it there, wedged between my winter coats, my stomach twisted with equal parts relief and dread. I hadn't deposited it, hadn't spent a single dollar, because spending it would make this real, would mean accepting whatever came with Dante Moretti's generosity. But the bills kept coming. The landlord knocked twice, his patience wearing thin, and Maya needed new shoes. Her toes were cramped in the ones she had, but I kept telling her they'd stretch. On the 4th day, everything changed. I was walking home from my evening shift, Maya's hand in mine as she chattered about the picture she'd drawn at Mrs. Chen's, a lopsided house with a smiling sun. The streetlights flickered on as dusk settled over the neighborhood, casting long shadows that made familiar streets feel alien. The black car pulled up beside us, smooth and silent. My heart stopped. Maya kept talking, oblivious, but I felt every muscle in my body tense. The back window rolled down, and there he was, Dante. He looked different than at the funeral, less composed. His tie was loosened, top button undone, dark hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it, but his eyes, those dangerous, consuming eyes, were just as intense as I remembered. "Get in," he said, not a request. "Excuse me?" I pulled Maya closer, my voice sharper than I intended. "Please." The word seemed to cost him something. "I need to talk to you. 5 minutes. I have my daughter. I know." His gaze dropped to Maya, and something in his expression softened. "There's a park 2 blocks from here. Swings and everything. My driver will take her while we talk. You'll be able to see her the entire time." Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was insane. You didn't get into cars with strange men, no matter how expensive their suits or how compelling their eyes. You didn't hand your child over to their drivers. But I looked at Maya, her shoes with holes in the toes, and thought about the envelope in my closet, about the electric bill I couldn't pay, about the fact that this man had already proven he knew everything about my life. 5 minutes, I heard myself say. The driver, a stone-faced man who looked like he could break someone in half, opened the door. The interior smelled like leather, and that same cedar smoke scent I remembered from Dante. Maya climbed in with the fearlessness of a child who didn't yet understand danger, and I followed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The car was bigger than my entire apartment. Dante sat across from us, and even in the spacious interior, his presence felt overwhelming. "What's your name?" he asked Maya, his voice gentler than I'd heard it. "Maya." She smiled at him, completely unafraid. "I'm 3.5. 3.5 is a very important age." The corner of his mouth lifted not quite a smile, but close. He looked at me. "She has your eyes." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. The car stopped at the park. The driver, I heard Dante call him Victor, got out and opened Maya's door. "I like swings," Victor said in a surprisingly soft voice. "Want to show me how high you can go?" Maya looked at me for permission. I nodded, even though every maternal instinct I had was screaming. Victor lifted her out, and through the window, I watched them walk to the swings. He was gentle with her. "Careful. He has 3 daughters," Dante said quietly, reading my fear. He'd die before he'd let anything happen to her. "Why am I here?" I turned to face him, forcing steel into my voice. "Why the money? Why are you following me?" "I told you. I knew your mother." "That's not an answer." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time, I saw something besides confidence in his expression, something almost vulnerable. 20 years ago, I was 15. Stupid, angry. I got caught stealing from a corner store in your mother's neighborhood. His jaw tightened. The owner wanted to call the cops, would have sent me to juvie, and in my world, that would have been a death sentence. But your mother was there. She paid for what I'd stolen and told the owner I was her nephew, just made a mistake. I stared at him, trying to imagine my soft-spoken mother confronting anyone, let alone saving a teenage boy who would grow into this. "She didn't know me," he continued. Didn't know what I'd become. She just saw a scared kid and decided to help. That kind of kindness. He paused, something painful crossing his face. It's rare in my world. I never forgot it. So the money is repayment? My voice came out smaller than I intended. The money is nothing. He said it like he meant it. I want to help you, Alara. Really help you. Why? Because you're drowning. His eyes locked onto mine. Because you're doing everything right and still losing. Because your mother saved me once, and now I can save her, daughter. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt tears burn behind my eyes and blinked them back furiously. I couldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. I don't need saving. Yes. His voice was soft but absolute. You do. Through the window, I watched Maya laugh as Victor pushed her on the swing, her dark curls flying. She looked happy, carefree, everything I wanted for her but couldn't provide. What do you want from me? I whispered. Dante reached across the space between us and took my hand, the same gesture from the funeral. But this time it felt different. More deliberate, more dangerous. Dinner, he said. Tomorrow night. Just you and me. Let me explain what I'm offering. And if I say no? His thumb traced circles on my palm, sending electricity up my arm. Then I'll respect that. The money is yours either way. No strings. But we both knew that was a lie. The strings were already there, invisible and tightening with every second his hand held mine. 1. Dinner, I said finally. He smiled a real smile this time, and it transformed his entire face. Made him look younger, almost human. 1 dinner, he agreed, but something in his eyes told me it would never be just one anything with Dante Moretti. It would be everything or nothing, and I was terrified of which one I wanted more. I wore the only dress I owned that didn't smell like diner grease. It was simple, dark blue, fitted at the waist, hem falling just above my knees. I'd bought it 2 years ago for a job interview I never got. Now, standing in front of my cracked bathroom mirror, I wondered if it was nice enough for wherever Dante planned to take me. Wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Mrs. Chen had agreed to watch Maya overnight, bless her. I'd given her $40 I couldn't spare, and a bag packed with my daughter's favorite stuffed rabbit and enough snacks to survive a siege. Maya had kissed my cheek and told me I looked like a princess. I felt like a lamb walking into a wolf's den. The knock came at exactly 7 p.m., punctual. When I opened the door, Dante stood there in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. His gaze traveled slowly from my face down to my feet and back up, and I felt that look like a physical touch. When his eyes met mine again, something dark and hungry flickered there before he schooled his expression. You look beautiful, he said quietly. Thank you. My voice barely worked. He offered his arm like we were in some old movie, and after a hesitation that felt eternal, I took it. His muscles were solid beneath the expensive fabric, and I could feel his warmth even through the layers. The car waited below, not the black sedan from before, but something sleeker. A sports car that purred like a predator. He opened my door himself, and I slid into leather seats that probably cost more than everything I owned combined. Where are we going? I asked as he pulled into traffic. Somewhere private. He glanced at me, one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the gear shift, close enough that I could feel the ghost of his presence. I know you have questions. I want you comfortable enough to ask them. We drove through the city, past the neighborhoods I knew, into areas where buildings scraped the sky, and people walked with the kind of confidence that came from never worrying about money. My stomach knotted with each block, the distance from my world to his growing more obvious. Finally, he pulled up to a building that looked like something from a magazine, all glass and modern lines, doormen in uniforms that matched Dante's suit. We're eating here? I asked, suddenly aware of how cheap my dress must look. Top floor. The restaurant is closed tonight. He killed the engine and turned to face me. I rented it. You rented an entire restaurant? I wanted privacy. His expression was unreadable. With you, I need that. Something about the way he said it made my pulse quicken. He got out and opened my door, offering his hand. I took it, and he didn't let go as he led me inside. The elevator ride was silent, but I felt every inch of space between us humming with tension. His thumb traced absent patterns on my palm, the same gesture from the car, from the funeral, and I wondered if he knew what it did to me, how it made my breath catch and my thoughts scatter. The elevator doors opened onto a scene that stole what little breath I had left. The entire restaurant was empty, except for one table set by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Candles flickered in the low light, and soft music played from somewhere I couldn't see. It was beautiful, intimate, terrifying. Dante. I didn't know what I was trying to say. Come. He guided me to the table, pulled out my chair like a gentleman, then sat across from me. In the candlelight, his features looked softer, but his eyes still held that intensity that made me feel exposed, seen. A waiter appeared from nowhere. Where had he been hiding? And poured wine I definitely couldn't pronounce. Then he disappeared again, leaving us alone. You said you'd explain what you're offering, I managed, gripping the wine glass like a lifeline. I did. Dante leaned back, studying me. But first, I need you to understand something about my world. Your world. I took a sip of wine. It tasted expensive. Smooth. You mean the Mafia? I'd done research. 3 sleepless nights of Google searches and Reddit threads, piecing together who Dante Moretti actually was. What I'd found had terrified me: stories of violence, power, empires built on things I didn't want to imagine. But none of it had told me about the man sitting across from me, looking at me like I was something precious. Yes. He didn't flinch from the word. My family controls most of this city's underbelly. Shipping, real estate, security. We're not what you see in of movies. We're businessmen who operate outside certain laws. Certain laws. My laugh came out bitter. Like the ones against murder? Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. I've done things that would give you nightmares, Ilara. I won't lie about that. But I've also protected thousands of people. Kept order where chaos would destroy everything. Built something that supports entire communities. That doesn't make it right. No. He leaned forward, and suddenly the table between us felt like nothing. But it makes it necessary. And it makes me very good at solving problems. My problems. Yes. His gaze held mine. I want to take care of you and Maya. Pay off every debt. Make sure you never have to work another day at that diner unless you want to. Give your daughter everything she needs. My heart hammered. And in return? The waiter returned with plates of food. I barely registered something that looked like art, smelled like heaven. Dante waited until we were alone again, before answering. I want you in my life. His voice dropped lower, intimate. I want to know you, protect you. I want dinner like this, conversations like this. I want to watch Maya grow up safe and happy. I want. He paused, something raw crossing his face. I want to not be alone anymore. The confession hit me harder than any threat could have. This powerful, dangerous man who controlled half the city looked suddenly vulnerable, and I realized with startling clarity that he was as terrified of this as I was. You barely know me, I whispered. I know you're strong, kind. That you'd starve before you'd let your daughter go hungry. That your mother raised someone remarkable. His hand reached across the table, palm up, an invitation. I know I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment I saw you sitting alone at that funeral. I stared at his hand, at the choice he was offering. Everything I'd believed about right and wrong said I should walk away. But everything I felt, the pull, the connection, the way my body leaned toward him, even as my mind screamed warnings, said something different. I need time, I said finally. To think. Take all the time you need. But his eyes said he already knew my answer. Because despite everything, the danger, the impossibility, the vast chasm between our worlds, I knew it too. I was already falling. And Dante Moretti was right there, ready to catch me or destroy me. Maybe both. I said yes 3 days later. Not because I'd stopped being afraid. Not because I'd convinced myself this was smart or safe or anything resembling rational. I said yes because Maya asked why we were eating cereal for dinner again, and I couldn't give her another lie about how it was an adventure. I said yes because the electricity got shut off, and I sat in the dark with my daughter singing her to sleep, pretending the candles were magical instead of necessary. I said yes because Dante had texted me every morning simple messages that felt like lifelines. Good morning. Thinking of you. You're not alone. And God help me, I wasn't anymore. The transformation happened fast. Too fast. Within a week, my debts vanished like they'd never existed. The landlord suddenly remembered repairs he'd been ignoring for months. My bank account, which had been perpetually in the red, showed a balance that made me dizzy. I don't want your money in my account. I'd told Dante during one of our phone calls that had become nightly rituals. It's not my money. His voice was warm, patient. It's yours. For Maya. For yourself. Let me do this, Alara. It feels like I'm being bought. Silence stretched between us, heavy with things unsaid. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. If I wanted to buy you, I would have done it differently. This isn't about ownership. It's about care. Care. The word felt foreign, coming from a man whose world was built on violence and control, but every action backed it up. He never pushed for more than I was willing to give, never demanded. Just waited with a patience that felt infinite and terrifying. 2 weeks after our first dinner, he invited me to his home. Just to talk, he'd said. Maya can come. I want her to be comfortable with me. That should have been my first warning that this was deeper than dinner dates and phone calls. That Dante Moretti was weaving us into his life with careful, deliberate threads. His house was in the hills, a sprawling modern estate behind gates that probably cost more than my childhood home. As Victor drove us up the winding driveway, Maya pressed her face to the window, eyes huge. It's like a castle, Mama. Something like that, baby, I murmured, my stomach churning with anxiety. Dante met us at the door himself, dressed casually in dark jeans and a black shirt rolled to his elbows. Less intimidating than the suits, but somehow more dangerous. I could see the lines of his body, the strength barely contained, beneath civilized clothing. Welcome. His eyes found mine first, held them for a heartbeat too long, then dropped to Maya. Hello, Maya. I'm Dante. My daughter, who was usually shy around strangers, smiled at him. Your house is really big. It is. He crouched down to her level, and watching this powerful man fold himself down for my 3-year-old did something to my chest. Want to see something cool? She nodded enthusiastically. He led us through rooms that could have been in museums, marble floors, art on the walls, furniture that looked too perfect to touch. But he didn't take us to any of those. Instead, he opened a door to reveal a room that made Maya gasp. It was a playroom, brand new, filled with toys still in packages. A dollhouse bigger than our apartment's closet. Stuffed animals, art supplies, everything a child could dream of. I had it set up yesterday, Dante said quietly, his eyes on me now. Not Maya. Thought she might like a place to play while we talk. Maya didn't wait for permission. She ran inside, squealing with delight, immediately gravitating toward a rocking horse that probably cost thousands of dollars. This is too much, I whispered. No. His hand found the small of my back, guiding me away from the doorway while keeping Maya in sight. It's not enough. We stood in the hallway, close enough that I could feel his heat, smell that cedar smoke scent that had started invading my dreams. His hand stayed on my back, possessive and gentle at once. Why are you doing this? My voice cracked. Really? I told you. No. I turned to face him, and his hand slid around to my waist, keeping me close. You told me about my mother, about repaying kindness. But this isn't repayment anymore, Dante. This is something else. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then his free hand came up, cupping my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him. When I saw you at that funeral, he said, slowly, sitting there alone with your daughter, so strong and so broken at the same time, something in me recognized something in you. His thumb traced my cheekbone. We're both survivors, Alara. Both people who've had to be harder than we wanted to be. And I looked at you and thought, I could spend my whole life making sure she never has to be that hard again. My breath caught. That's insane. You don't even know me. Then let me. His forehead touched mine, and I felt his words against my lips. Let me know you. Let me take care of you. Let me be something other than the monster everyone thinks I am. I'm not your redemption, I whispered, even as my hands found his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath my palms. No. His arms wrapped around me fully now, and I let him pull me against him. Let myself feel safe for the first time in years. You're my reason. We stood like that, wrapped in each other while Maya's laughter echoed from the playroom, and I felt something shift inside me. A wall I'd built after Maya's father left, after my mother got sick, after every disappointment and betrayal it cracked. I'm scared, I admitted against his chest. Good. His lips brushed my hair. So am I. That confession, more than anything else, undid me. Because Dante Moretti wasn't supposed to be afraid. He was supposed to be invincible, untouchable. But in his arms, I felt his vulnerability matching mine. Maya called out, asking me to see her ride the rocking horse, and I pulled away from Dante, immediately missing his warmth. But when I looked back, his expression had changed. Someone was calling his phone. He glanced at it, and everything about him went cold and sharp, the warrior replacing the man who'd just held me. I need to take this. He stepped away, phone to his ear. What? I couldn't hear the other side, but I watched Dante's face transform. Fury, cold calculation, something that looked like violence barely restrained. When? His voice was lethal. A pause. Handle it. I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at me, and I saw both the man who'd held me and the monster who ruled the underworld. I have to go, he said. Victor will take you home. What's wrong? Nothing you need to worry about. But his eyes told me it was everything I should worry about. He kissed my forehead quick, possessive, and walked away, already pulling on the cold armor of his other life. And I stood there, Maya's laughter behind me, watching him disappear into darkness, and realized I'd just glimpsed the truth. Loving Dante Moretti meant loving all of him, even the parts that terrified me. Dante didn't call for 2 days. No texts. No good morning messages. Just silence that felt like abandonment. And I hated myself for how much it hurt. For how quickly I'd become dependent on his presence, his voice, the certainty that someone cared whether I woke up each morning. I tried to tell myself it was better this way. That distance would help me think clearly. Remind me that getting involved with a man like him was suicide by inches. But Maya kept asking when we could visit Dante's castle again, and I had no answer that didn't taste like a lie. On the 3rd day, Victor showed up at the diner during my lunch shift. My stomach dropped when I saw him walk through the door, his massive frame making the cramped space feel smaller. Customers glanced nervously at him, then away, recognizing Predator even if they couldn't name it. You need to come with me, he said quietly when he reached my station. I'm working. Now, Miss Hayes. His tone was respectful but absolute. Please. Something in his expression concerned beneath the professionalism made my blood run cold. Is Maya? Your daughter is fine. This is about Dante. I grabbed my purse without another word, told Joe I had an emergency, and followed Victor to the car. My hands shook as I slid into the back seat. What happened? I demanded as he pulled into traffic. He'll explain. Victor's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. But you should know what you're about to see. It's part of who he is. The part he didn't want you to know yet. My chest tightened. Is he hurt? Not physically. We drove to a part of the city I'd never been, industrial warehouses and abandoned lots where respectable people didn't venture after dark. Even in daylight, it felt wrong. Dangerous. Victor parked behind a warehouse with broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. 2 men in suits stood guard at a side entrance, both armed. They nodded at Victor and let us pass without question. Inside, the warehouse was hollow and cold, our footsteps echoing off concrete. Voices carried from somewhere deeper in the building, angry, sharp. One of them was Dante's, and even raised in fury, it made something in me respond. Victor led me to a doorway, then stopped. He's in there, with the man who's been skimming from his operations for 6 months. The man who just tried to have him killed. My heart stopped. What? Go. Victor's expression was sympathetic. He needs to know you see him. All of him. I stepped through the doorway into a scene from a nightmare. The room was bare except for a chair bolted to the floor. A man sat in it, bloodied, beaten, cable ties binding his wrists. 3 other men stood around the perimeter, but I only saw Dante. He stood in front of the chair, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, blood on his knuckles. His hair was disheveled, face cold with a fury I'd never seen. This wasn't the gentle man who'd held me. This was the monster everyone feared. Please, the man in the chair sobbed. I didn't know they'd try to kill you. I just gave them information. You betrayed me. Dante's voice was ice. Sold me out to the Russians for what? Money you were already stealing? I'm sorry. Sorry? Dante laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. You're sorry you got caught. He pulled something from his waistband. A gun. Matte. Black and terrifying, and pressed it against the man's temple. I must have made a sound because Dante froze. His head whipped around, and when he saw me standing there, every ounce of color drained from his face. Alara. My name came out strangled. What are you, Victor? She needed to see, Victor said from behind me, calm and certain. No. Dante lowered the gun, his mask cracking. Not like this. But it was too late. I'd seen the violence he was capable of, the coldness in his eyes, the way his men looked at him with fear and respect. This was his world, blood and loyalty and decisions most people couldn't imagine making. Get her out of here, Dante ordered, but I was already backing away, my vision swimming. I ran, through the warehouse, past the guards, into the daylight that felt too bright, too normal. Victor caught up with me at the car, but I was already bent over, dry heaving, my body rejecting what I'd just witnessed. Breathe, Victor said quietly. He was going to kill him. My voice shook. Right there. He was just going to... That man tried to have Dante murdered 3 days ago, sent assassins to a restaurant where Dante was meeting with city officials. 4 innocent people died in the crossfire. Victor's tone was matter of fact. In our world, there's only one response to betrayal. Your world is insane, yes. He opened the car door. But it's the world that's kept you and Maya safe. Every debt you had, those were held by dangerous people. Dante made them disappear. The men who were watching you before he found you, they work for his enemies. He put protection on you that you never saw. I stared at him, comprehension dawning like horror. I was in danger? You still are. Anyone connected to Dante becomes a target. Victor's expression was gentle but honest. But you're safer with him than without him. That's the choice you have to make. I got in the car, my mind spinning. Victor drove me home in silence, and I walked up to my apartment like a ghost. Mrs. Chen had Maya for another hour. I had 60 minutes to decide if I was going to run or stay. I was sitting on my couch, still in shock, when my door opened. Dante walked in, he had a key, I realized. And wasn't that terrifying? Looking more wrecked than I'd ever seen him. He'd cleaned the blood off his hands, but his shirt was still spattered with it. His eyes were haunted. I never wanted you to see that, he said roughly. But it's who you are. Yes. He didn't move closer, like he was afraid I'd bolt. It's part of who I am, the part that protects what's mine, the part that ensures loyalty and order in a world that has neither. Did you kill him? I had to know. No. Dante's jaw clenched. I wanted to, but I kept thinking about Maya asking when she could visit again, about you holding me like I was something worth saving. His voice cracked. I had my men take him to the Russians instead. Let them handle their own traitor. That's not better. I know. The word exploded out of him. I know it's not better. I know I'm a monster. But I'm a monster who loves you, Alara. Who would burn this entire city down before I'd let anything hurt you or your daughter? The confession hung between us, raw and terrifying. You can't love me, I whispered. You barely know me. I know enough. He took one step closer, then stopped. I know you're the only thing that's made me want to be better. The only person who's looked at me and seen something other than fear or ambition or usefulness. Tears streamed down my face. I don't know if I can do this. Your world is violent and dark and everything you should run from. He closed the distance between us, cupping my face with hands that had just held a gun. But I'm begging you not to. I'm begging you to let me love you anyway. And standing there, his hands on my face, blood still on his shirt, I made the most dangerous decision of my life. I kissed him. The kiss started, gentle, tentative, like we were both afraid of what it meant. His lips were softer than I'd imagined, careful despite the violence still humming beneath his skin. But when I pressed closer, something in both of us broke. His hands slid into my hair, tilting my head back as the kiss deepened, turned hungry, desperate. I grabbed his shirt, the one still spattered with evidence of who he really was, and pulled him closer, needing to feel something other than fear, needing to remember I was alive. Alara, he breathed against my mouth, and my name sounded like a prayer, like salvation. If we do this, there's no going back. I know. And I did. I knew I was stepping off a cliff with no way to climb back up. I don't care. That was all the permission he needed. He lifted me like I weighed nothing, and I wrapped my legs around his waist as he carried me to the couch. We fell into it together, hands everywhere, trying to map each other through layers of clothing and hesitation. But then, he stopped, pulled back, breathing hard, his forehead pressed to mine. "Not like this," he said roughly. "Not when you're scared and I still have blood on my clothes. You deserve better than this. Dante, let me do this right." His thumb traced my swollen lips. "Let me take you somewhere, romance you properly. Not in your apartment where you can still smell the fear from what you saw today." He was right, and I hated it. Hated that he was being honorable when every nerve in my body was screaming for him to stay, to make me forget everything except the way his hands felt on my skin. "Tomorrow," he promised. "I'll pick you up tomorrow night. We'll go somewhere that's just ours, and I'll show you what it means to be loved by me." "And what does that mean?" I whispered. His smile was dark and full of promise. Everything. He left before I could change my mind, before I could pull him back, and I sat alone in my apartment, lips still tingling, body still aching, wondering if I'd just made a deal with the devil or found my salvation. The next 24 hours crawled by like torture. Every minute felt like an hour, every hour like a day. I dropped Maya at Mrs. Chen's with an overnight bag and a kiss, ignoring her knowing smile when she saw my dress, a new one Dante had sent over. Black silk that clung in ways my old dresses never had. "You look like you're going somewhere important," Mrs. Chen said. "I am." I didn't know how to explain what was happening. Didn't know how to put into words that I was about to give myself completely to a man who lived in darkness. Dante arrived exactly at 7, dressed in all black like he'd stepped out of my fantasies. His eyes raked over me with an intensity that made my knees weak. "You're stunning," he said, voice rough. "So are you." He drove us out of the city, into the mountains where lights faded and stars emerged. We didn't talk much, the silence between us was heavy with anticipation, with everything we were about to do. Finally, he pulled up to a cabin hidden among trees, modern glass and wood, glowing warmly from inside. "Remote, private, ours. I own it," he explained as he helped me out. "Use it when I need to disappear. No one knows about this place except Victor." "You're bringing me to your secret hideaway?" I tried to make it sound light, but my voice shook. "I'm bringing you to the only place where I can be just Dante, not the boss, not the monster. Just a man who wants to be with a woman he can't stop thinking about." Inside was intimate, an open living space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley, a fireplace already crackling with warmth, and candles everywhere. He'd planned this, prepared it like he'd been certain I'd say yes. "Wine?" he offered. "Something stronger." He poured us both whiskey, and we stood by the windows, looking out at the darkness punctuated by distant city lights. His arm slid around my waist, pulling me back against his chest, and I felt his heartbeat steady, strong against my spine. "I need you to understand something," he said quietly. "Once we do this, you're mine. In my world, that means something. It means I'll protect you with everything I have, but it also means you become a target. Everyone who wants to hurt me will know that hurting you is the fastest way to destroy me." I turned in his arms, looking up at his face, shadowed in candlelight. "Are you trying to talk me out of this?" "I'm trying to be honest." His hand cupped my face. "Because if something happened to you or Maya because of me, it would kill me. And I'm not exaggerating. It would end me." "Then don't let anything happen to us," I whispered. "I won't." It was a vow. A promise sealed with the kind of certainty that only dangerous men could have. "I'll burn the world down first." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. When he kissed me this time, there was no hesitation, no holding back. He walked me backward toward the bedroom, hands sliding over silk, finding skin. My dress pooled at my feet, and his shirt followed, and then we were skin to skin, breathing each other in. "Last chance," he murmured against my neck. "Tell me to stop and I will." "Don't stop." I pulled him down onto the bed. "Don't ever stop." What happened next was everything tender and fierce, gentle and consuming. He worshipped every inch of me like I was something sacred, whispering things in Italian I didn't understand but felt in my bones. And when we finally came together, when he filled the empty spaces inside me I'd forgotten existed, I felt something fundamental shift. This wasn't just sex. This was claiming, possession, two damaged people finding shelter in each other's darkness. Afterward, we lay tangled in sheets, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my spine while I listened to his heartbeat slow. The fire crackled in the other room, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "I know it's too soon, and I know it's insane, but I love you, Alara." My throat tightened. "Dante, you don't have to say it back." His arms tightened around me. "Just don't leave, that's all I ask." I tilted my head up, found his eyes in the dim light. "I'm not going anywhere." But even as I said it, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once. Twice. Insistent. He ignored it, kissing me deeper. But it kept buzzing. Finally, with a curse, he grabbed it. I watched his face change as he read the screen. Watched warmth become ice, love become lethal focus. "What is it?" I asked, fear creeping back in. He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that terrified me. "Someone just took a photo of us at the restaurant 2 weeks ago," he said quietly, "and sent it to my biggest rival with a message. Found your weakness." My blood turned to ice. "Get dressed," Dante ordered, already moving. "We need to get to Maya, now." I'd never dressed so fast in my life. My hands shook as I yanked on my clothes, barely, registering that Dante was on his phone, barking orders in Italian, his voice sharp enough to cut. The tenderness from minutes ago had vanished, replaced by the cold strategist who ruled an empire. "Victor, get to Mrs. Chen's apartment now." "No, I don't care, wake the entire building if you have to. Get Maya and bring her to the safe house." A pause. "If anyone tries to stop you, handle it." Handle it. Those 2 words contained a universe of violence. "Dante." My voice cracked. "What if they're not?" He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door with controlled urgency. "They sent the photo to taunt me, not to tell me they'd already struck. It's a game. They want me scared and sloppy. I'm terrified." Tears streamed down my face as we ran to the car. "This is my daughter. My baby. Our baby." The words stopped me cold. He opened the car door, his eyes blazing. "From the moment I decided to love you, she became mine to protect too. And I protect what's mine. Alara. Always." The drive back to the city was a blur of speed and terror. Dante drove like a man possessed, one hand on the wheel, the other holding his phone as updates came through. I sat rigid in my seat, praying to gods I hadn't believed in since I was a child. Please let her be safe." "Victor has her," Dante said suddenly, and I sobbed with relief. "She's fine, still asleep. He's taking her to one of my properties, a penthouse downtown with security that could withstand a siege. I need to see her." "You will." His hand found mine, squeezed. 5 minutes. But 5 minutes felt eternal. Every red light, every car in our way, every second that separated me from Maya was agony. I'd brought this on her. My choices. My weakness for a man I should have run from. "This is my fault," I whispered. "No." Dante's voice was hard. "This is theirs. The Volkov family has been looking for leverage against me for years. They would have found something eventually. Better it's you, someone I can protect than a vulnerability I didn't know existed." "How is that better?" "Maya's in danger because of me. Maya's in danger because men like Alexei Volkov see the world as a chessboard and everyone else as pieces to sacrifice." He pulled up to a high-rise building I'd passed 1,000 times but never entered. But he made one critical mistake. "What?" Dante's smile was terrifying. He threatened the only 2 people in this world I'd kill for. We rode the elevator to the top floor, accompanied by 2 armed guards who appeared from nowhere. The penthouse doors opened to reveal a space that looked like a fortress disguised as luxury-reinforced walls, security cameras, and Victor standing in the living room with Maya asleep in his massive arms. I ran to them, taking my daughter carefully, checking every inch of her for harm. She stirred, blinking sleepily. "Mama?" Her small voice shattered me. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe, baby." I kissed her forehead, breathing in her. Familiar scent, apple shampoo, and innocence. "Go back to sleep." She did, her trust absolute. Victor had laid out blankets on the couch, and I settled her there, tucking her in with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "She didn't wake when I carried her out," Victor said quietly. "Mrs. Chen tried to stop me, but I explained it was an emergency. She understood. Thank you." The words felt inadequate. Dante stood across the room, phone pressed to his ear, having a rapid conversation in Italian with someone who kept saying, "Si, capo." When he hung up, His expression was carved from granite. My men are securing all our territories. Every business, every asset, every person under my protection is being moved or guarded. I've called in every favor, activated every alliance. He looked at me. This ends tonight. What does that mean? It means I'm going to meet with Alexei Volkov and make him understand that touching you or Maya means war. Total war. The kind that burns everything to ash. Fear shot through me. You can't just walk into a meeting with the man who threatened us. I'm not walking in. His smile was cold. I'm bringing 50 armed men and enough firepower to level a city block. This is a show of strength, not negotiation. Dante, this is my world, Alara. He crossed to me, cupping my face with hands that had killed, that had loved, that had held Maya like she was precious. This is what I do, how I keep the people I love safe. What if something happens to you? The question tore out of me. What if you don't come back? Then Victor becomes Maya's godfather and ensures you're both protected forever. He said it like he'd already planned for his own death. But I will come back, because I have something to live for now. He kissed me deep and claiming and desperate, then pulled away before I could hold on. Victor, if I'm not back in 3 hours, execute Protocol Omega. Understood, Capo. I didn't know what Protocol Omega meant, but the way Victor's expression shifted told me it was apocalyptic. Dante walked toward the elevator, and I watched him leave this man who'd become everything too fast, who'd turned my safe, small world into something dangerous and vast. Don't die, I called after him. He looked back, something fierce and alive burning in his eyes. Not a chance. I haven't shown you the world yet. The elevator doors closed. I sank onto the floor beside the couch where Maya slept, and Victor sat in a chair nearby, gun resting on his lap like it was part of him. He'll be okay, Victor said, though his tone was more prayer than certainty. Dante's survived worse. Has he ever had this much to lose? Victor was quiet for a long moment. No, but that makes him more dangerous, not less. A man with nothing to lose is reckless. A man protecting what he loves is unstoppable. I held onto those words like a lifeline as minutes crawled into an hour, then 2. My phone buzzed constantly updates from Dante's men that Victor monitored, news alerts about unusual activity in the warehouse district, police scanners reporting disturbances. The city was holding its breath, waiting to see which crime family would still be standing when dawn broke. And I was trapped in this golden cage, praying the man I'd given myself to would survive the night. Maya stirred, reaching for me in her sleep, and I gathered her close, breathing in her innocence while the world outside descended into calculated violence. 2 hours and 47 minutes after Dante left, Victor's phone rang. He answered, listened, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Well? My voice was barely a whisper. Alexei Volkov is dead, Victor said quietly, and Dante's on his way back. Relief and horror crashed through me in equal measure. The man I loved had just killed for me, and somehow, that made me love him more. Dante returned at dawn, covered in blood that wasn't his. I heard the elevator doors open and stood, my body moving before my mind could catch up. Maya was still asleep, her small form peaceful on the couch, unaware that violence had been committed in her name. He stood in the entryway, suit jacket gone, white shirt soaked crimson, face spattered with evidence of what he'd done. But his eyes, those dark, consuming eyes, found mine immediately, and I saw exhaustion there, relief, and something raw that looked like anguish. Is any of that yours? My voice was steadier than I felt. No. He didn't move closer, like he was afraid to contaminate me with what he'd become tonight. It's over, Alara. The threat is gone. Victor appeared from the shadows. I'll clean up and watch Maya. You two need to talk. I nodded, unable to speak, and followed Dante down a hallway to a master bedroom I hadn't seen before. He walked straight to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and began stripping off his ruined clothes with mechanical precision. Dante. I stopped him, my hand on his. Talk to me. What do you want me to say? His voice was hollow. That I walked into Volkov's warehouse with enough men to start a war? That I gave him a choice swear on his life to never touch you or Maya, or die? That he laughed and told me I was weak for caring about a woman and a child who weren't even my blood? His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally wearing off. I killed him myself, he continued, staring at his blood-stained hands. Put a bullet in his head while his men watched. Made an example so brutal that every family in this city will think twice before they look at you wrong. I should have been horrified. Should have run. Instead, I stepped closer, reaching for the buttons on his shirt. "What are you doing?" he asked hoarsely. "Taking care of you." I unbuttoned the shirt, pushing it off his shoulders. "You protected us. Now let me help you." "Alara, I just killed a man. I know." I met his eyes. "And I'm still here." Something broke in his expression. He pulled me, against him, heedless of the blood, and buried his face in my neck. His shoulders shook, and I realized with shock that Dante Moretti, the most feared man in the city, was crying. I was terrified, he whispered against my skin. Terrified I wouldn't make it back to you. That they'd find a way to hurt Maya before I could stop them. That you'd look at me after tonight and see only the monster. I see you. I held him tighter. All of you. The monster and the man, and I'm not going anywhere. We stayed like that until his breathing steadied, until the vulnerability was carefully locked away again. Then I helped him out of the rest of his clothes and into the shower, following him under the hot spray. Water turned pink, then clear as I washed the evidence of violence from his skin. My hands were gentle, careful, treating each scar I discovered like a story I wanted to know. There were so many knife wounds, bullet grazes, marks that spoke of a lifetime of survival. Each one has a name, he said quietly, watching me trace a jagged line across his ribs. A lesson. A reminder of what happens when you're not fast enough or strong enough. Who taught you to survive like this? My father. His jaw tightened. He believed love was weakness. Caring made you vulnerable. So he beat the softness out of me until all that remained was sharp edges and cold calculation. He was wrong. Was he? Dante's hand cupped my face, water streaming between us. Look what happened. I fell for you, and within weeks, enemies were circling. You and Maya became targets because I couldn't hide what you mean to me. But we're safe now. For how long? The question was tortured. How long before the next threat emerges? Before someone else decides that the way to hurt me is through you? I grabbed his face, forcing him to look at me. Then you'll handle it. Like you did tonight. Like you'll do every time. Because that's who you are, Dante. You protect what's yours. And you're mine. And you're mine. Not a question. A statement of absolute fact. Yes. The admission should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like freedom. I'm yours. He kissed me then, desperate and claiming. All the fear and relief and love pouring between us. I wrapped myself around him, needing to feel him alive and whole, needing to erase the image of him covered in blood. We moved from the shower to the bed, water dripping, not bothering to dry off. This time was different from the cabin, less gentle, more urgent. Like we were trying to prove to each other that we'd survived, that we were still here, still together. His hands mapped my body with reverence and possession, and I gave myself over completely, trusting him with parts of myself I'd never shown anyone. And when he moved inside me, when our eyes locked and held, I felt something click into place. This was love. Messy and dangerous and absolutely real. I love you, I gasped, as pleasure built between us. God help me, I love you. His rhythm faltered, emotion cracking through his control. Say it again. I love you. Louder this time, certain. I love you, Dante Moretti. We shattered together, holding on like we could merge into one person, one heartbeat. Afterward, tangled in sheets with morning light filtering through bulletproof windows, he pulled me against his chest. Marry me, he said into the quiet. I went still. What? Marry me. He tilted my face up to his. Not because you're in danger or because I'm trying to trap you. Marry me because I want to wake up next to you every morning. Because I want to be Maya's father legally, not just in my heart. Because in my world, marriage is sacred. It's a vow I'll never break. Dante, we barely... I know it's fast. I know it's insane. His thumb traced my lips. But I've lived 34 years in darkness, and you're the first light I've seen. Don't make me wait to make you mine in every way that matters. I thought about Maya sleeping peacefully in the next room, guarded by men who'd die for her now. Thought about the life Dante was offering, dangerous, yes, but also full of a love so fierce it had literally moved mountains tonight. Ask me properly, I whispered. He smiled that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face and slid out of bed, naked and unashamed, dropping to one knee beside it. Alara Hayes, will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth the risk? I looked at this complicated, violent, tender man who'd killed for me and cried in my arms, and gave him the only answer my heart would allow. Yes. 3 months later, I stood in front of a mirror in a dress that cost more than my old apartment's annual rent, and tried to remember how to breathe. The wedding was small, just Victor, Mrs. Chen, a handful of Dante's most trusted men, and Maya, who was currently spinning in circles in her flower girl dress, completely unaware that today would change everything. You look beautiful, Mama, she squealed, and I couldn't help but smile. Beautiful. I barely recognized myself. The woman in the mirror had color in her cheeks, light in her eyes, and a diamond on her finger that caught the afternoon sun streaming through the penthouse windows. This woman wasn't drowning in debt or working double shifts, or lying awake at night wondering how to feed her daughter. This woman was loved. You ready? Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Dante's waiting, and that man looks like he might combust if he has to wait much longer. I laughed, nervous energy bubbling up. How does he look? Like a man who's about to marry his entire world. My throat tightened. 3 months since that night when he'd killed for us. 3 months of learning to navigate his world, the security, the constant presence of guards, the whispered conversations in Italian that I was slowly beginning to understand. 3 months of watching him with Maya, seeing him transform from ruthless crime boss to patient father figure who braided her hair wrong and let her paint his nails sparkly pink. 3 months of falling deeper in love with every complicated layer I discovered. Okay. I smoothed my dress, simple ivory silk that Dante had chosen, saying he wanted to be able to remember every detail when he finally got to take it off me later. I'm ready. The ceremony was on the penthouse terrace, overlooking the city that Dante controlled from the shadows. White flowers everywhere, candles waiting to be lit at sunset, and Dante standing at the end of a short aisle in a black suit that made him look like sin personified. But it was his expression when he saw me that stopped my heart-raw vulnerability mixed with fierce possession, love and hunger, and something that looked like disbelief that I was real. Maya went first, tossing petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy, and everyone chuckled. Then Mrs. Chen squeezed my hand and released me, and I walked toward the man who'd saved me while I'd saved him right back. Hi, I whispered when I reached him. Hi. His voice was rough, eyes suspiciously bright. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You're not so bad yourself. The officiant, a judge who owed Dante multiple favors, began speaking, but I barely heard the words. I was too focused on Dante's hands holding mine, on the way his thumb traced circles on my palm like he'd done since that first night at the funeral, on the absolute certainty in his eyes. The couple has prepared their own vows, the judge said. Dante? Dante took a breath, and when he spoke, his voice carried across the terrace with quiet intensity. Ilara, I was raised to believe love was weakness, that caring made you vulnerable, and vulnerability got you killed. For 34 years I lived that way, cold, alone, convinced that power was the only thing that mattered. His grip on my hands tightened. Then I saw you sitting at your mother's funeral, holding your daughter, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, and something in me broke open. You taught me that love isn't weakness. It's the only thing strong enough to make life worth surviving. I vow to protect you and Maya with everything I have. To be the man you see when you look at me, even when I can't see it myself. To love you through every danger, every doubt, every moment, until my last breath. Tears streamed down my face. The judge cleared his throat, nodded at me. Your turn, dear. I tried to find words adequate for what Dante meant to me, for how completely he'd transformed my world. Finally, I just spoke from the heart. Dante, you found me when I was drowning and didn't just throw me a rope, you dove in after me. You saw me, really saw me, when I'd become invisible to everyone else. You loved my daughter like she was yours before I'd even admitted I was falling for you. I smiled through my tears. You're dangerous and tender, violent and gentle, and somehow, you're exactly what I needed. I vow to be your light in the darkness, to remind you that you're more than what your father made you, to love every complicated part of you, the monster and the man, for as long as we both live. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The judge smiled. You may kiss your bride. Dante pulled me against him, one hand in my hair, the other at my waist, and kissed me like we weren't surrounded by witnesses, like I was oxygen and he'd been suffocating. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. Mine, he whispered. Finally, completely mine. Yours, I agreed. Always. Maya crashed into our legs, hugging us both. Does this mean Dante's my daddy now? Dante crouched down to her level, his expression soft in a way that still surprised me. If you want me to be. Yes. She threw her arms around his neck. I always wanted a daddy. I watched him hold her. This man who'd killed less than 24 hours ago to protect a shipment of medical supplies for one of his legitimate businesses, now cradling my daughter like she was made of glass. The duality no longer terrified me. It was just who he was. Who we were now. The reception was intimate, expensive wine, food I couldn't pronounce, and toasts from Victor that made everyone laugh and cry. As the sun set, Dante pulled me onto the empty dance floor, holding me close while music played softly. Any regrets? He murmured against my hair. Not a single one. I looked up at him. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. His hand splayed possessively across my lower back. But we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. The rest of our lives, I repeated, testing the words. They felt right. Solid. And I intend to spend every day proving you made the right choice. He spun me gently, and I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. This wasn't a fairy tale. There would still be danger, still be threats from rivals who saw our love as weakness to exploit. There would be nights when Dante came home with blood on his hands, mornings when I questioned the world I'd entered. But there would also be this moments of perfect clarity when everything made sense. When I looked at my husband and daughter dancing together, at the family we'd built from broken pieces, and knew with absolute certainty that I'd choose this life every single time. What are you thinking? Dante asked, pulling me back into his arms. I smiled up at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd become my everything. That I love you, that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Good. He kissed me softly, sweetly. Because I'm never letting you go. And as the city lights flickered on below us, as Maya's laughter echoed across the terrace, as Dante held me like I was something precious, I knew the truth. I'd sat alone at a funeral, drowning and desperate, and a Mafia boss had said, "Let me hold your hand." He'd been holding it ever since, and he always would.